Builder inventory is at an all-time high in terms of contracts that are pending right now. Well, there is a fear in the marketplace right now that many of these contracts will default, terminate, and that will put a flood of new builds on the market. We're going to cover this. I've got Chris Jacobs speaking at our last monthly meeting with Spyglass Realty at ABOR, and I give my thoughts at the end of what I think this truly means for our market. We're going to give it up to Chris Jacob here. He's going to talk about what's happening in the market currently. And then afterwards, we have an announcement by Emily Bibby, and Sunny may want to announce some stuff too. So, all right, here we go.
Hey guys, how are y'all doing today? For those of you who don't know me, I'm Chris Jacob. I'm with All City Real Estate, and I run the Housing Report Facebook group on Facebook. So, my background was I was a metals analyst, so my job was to track numbers, know when we should be hedging things, when we shouldn't be hedging things, should we be buying materials in low-cost regions, should we be buying them domestically. So we did a lot of analytics, and when I started in real estate 16 years ago, there was no core real-time sets of numbers. So, when you come from having your KPIs every day, you wake up. Our mortgage lenders all have their KPIs. They got their little MBS that they track on their phones. Like, you ever see a mortgage lender go, can I see the charts? And every one of them will hand you their phone and go, look what the numbers are doing today. We're up or down. Here are the basis point shifts. So I was doing my own numbers, and, COVID kind of came around, and then my European investors are like, what's going to happen in the marketplace? And I'm like, I have no clue. I do know if I wait for these numbers to kind of come out from Texas A&M, they're going to be 45 to 60 days old. And, Ryan and everybody's talked about, well, I'm going to buy the dip. I'm going to buy the dip. You never get to time the dip. You're lucky if you get to purchase in the dip. And you won't know until 6, 7, 8 months later because it takes time to flush stuff out. So I've got some quick updates on kind of where we're at today, if we got that first chart there. So some of the things, down, Ryan, just my bullet points.
This one?
The very first one, page 1.
Oh.
Yes, sir. So what's kind of interesting is in the last 30 days, and I like looking back a week before I report really sold data because I'm going to be honest, we're all kind of slow at reporting our solds. I'm guilty. I could be 6, 9 months sometimes when I finally get the phone call from ABOR like, hey, did that close? And I'm like, yeah, let me report that. So as of 7 days ago, the average sales price was $660K. And when we peaked in 2022, we peaked at 709. So we've already seen about a 5% shift from our peak. Our normal year-over-year peak happens in late Q2, early Q3, and that dip into November typically is about 5%. So we've seen that in the marketplace today. Now, I know the question is going to come up, Ryan will bring this up, is, well, what's the mix of home sales? What's driving those changes? And again, reality is we don't know until about 90 days out. Did we see a shift from luxury down to lower price points, or have we seen the whole market kind of come down? And that's because our data lags. But what we do know is, when we go look at our pendings, my forecast for the end of September, so if you think about it, we're the 25th today, almost all our September closings are on the books. And if you're not using the pendings and actives for your comps, you're going to miss the window. So my forecast in my forecast accuracy is like, I got a standard deviation of 0.79. So I'm estimating our September end close at 626. So that's another $40,000 reduction, $34,000 reduction between now and September. So if you're pricing your new listings coming on and stuff like that, I would look really aggressive at, if you're not pricing them right and you're pricing them on our solds from last week, you could be 5% off. 6% off. And I've had some conversations with people where like, I've had no showings in 40 days. What happened? I'm like, what are your comps? And we're using comps from 5 months ago, which we all know that was a totally different market. So some of the things I kind of believe in is if we're pricing stuff today, you probably need to be within 2% of where it's going to close. That way you drive your traffic, you get your offers, you hope for multiples. That multiples creates an auction. auction gets top dollar. That's kind of my opinion. Our sales unit volume, which is kind of interesting because I'm a firm believer we are in a recession. And we're in a recession in the sense of our unit volume's way down. So when we go look at our unit volume today, our unit volume is on par with August of 2012. So if you think of the sheer number of closings we're having, we're almost 10 years step back. Now, if we look at the end of Q3 or the end of Q1, we were the best year ever. So that's a big deviation from Q1 to Q3. Right now, our average months of supply is 3.63 months, which is really, really healthy, which ironically is the same amount of months we had in August of 2012. So we're kind of, 2012, we were going from a buyer's market to a seller's market. And right now, we've come out of an ultra strong seller's market, and we're in this purgatory we call real estate today. I'm not going to say it's a buyer's market, and I'm not going to say it's a seller's market. I think we're kind of neutral. So some of the things to kind of remember when we start looking at our comps and where we're at. If you're doing resales, the average days under contract right now is about 31 days. It's very, very normal. When we start looking at new builds, this is where it gets interesting. So if we look at our new builds, we're 138 days under contract to deliver a new build. That means those new build comps hitting the MLS were under contract 6 months ago. And that's on average, which means there's some contracts a year old, there's some contracts a day old. So just kind of be cautious when you start looking at new build comps. My forecast, we're showing no year-over-year step backs, which is really, really good. 2022 annual appreciation, 8.5% to 10% is my goal. NAR came out and the mortgage lenders came out and they said we're going to be double digits for 2022. Currently, we're at 14.5. So I still think we'll see some softening in Q4. So let's look at my fun charts now, guys. This is the boring stuff. So this chart here, the light blue line, which is the tallest one up there by the 4, that is total available units. Total available units are actives, holds, and pendings. Pendings aren't sold until they close. We're at just over 14,000. Last time we had 14,000 items in WIP was in 2012, or 2010. So that's 12 years ago, in the height of the financial crisis, or the tail end of the financial crisis. But what's really interesting is we've hit 3.6 months of inventory, and we found a floor. The dark blue line, that's our available actives. It's starting to plateau. That's really good. Orange line is our pendings. Got a good book of pendings. And our gray line is our reported solds. It's operating in a normal curve. So let's go to the next slide. This one's going to be my favorite one. This is the resale market. This is what I live in. I don't do new home sales, maybe one a decade. New home resales have hit 3.4 months. We've got shy of 8,000 doors. We've got 6,000 options on the marketplace. And our pendings had a tick up last week with low rates, and our solds are on task in a normal curve. So last time we had this number of actives, again for just resales, 2012. Same months of inventory. So we need to have our hat from a decade ago. So some of you newer agents, interest rates of 2012 were 5.25%, 5.5%. So it's pretty nice. So population, that's a great question. One of the things I'm trying to work at, and I got to get with the demographers office to see if I can find this, I want to track households versus population. Because I'd love to overlay the household counts to sales so we can see how healthy is the market. Because that's a great question, and I've been looking at it, and I don't have that answer. Yeah, I would. So I haven't accounted for population, but if we just think about the sheer number of sales, we're going to be about 2012 sales. Exactly. So we may have less buyers in the marketplace if we think about household growth. So let's look at new builds. New builds, this is going to be my wild card. I'm going to talk. Oh, no. So this is what I'm scared about, guys. I have avoided the word bubble. I hate the word bubble in real estate. It's not fun. During the financial crisis, I went 9 months without a closing. It's character building. For us, a lot of us left the industry during that period. But what I see here is with these new builds, and this is what I'm scared of, is if we're going to have a bubble burst in real estate in Austin, it's going to be here. And the reason I'm concerned with new builds is we have 6,500 available units. 3,200 of those are under contract. Those average days under contract are 6 months. Those buyers were qualified at 3%, 3.5%. What happens when they can't close? They're either going to come back to the marketplace, we're going to see them incentivized, we're going to see those things happen. Now what's interesting was, if you go look at the yellow line, which is our months, we peaked at 5 months of new build supply. We dipped to 4. That was right after most builders Q3. Those sales managers are like, let's get incentives. We all are getting those emails of 5% commissions, 6% commissions. 2 years ago, they were giving us nothing. And now they need us. So if we're going to have a bubble in Austin, and I hate to use the word bubble, it's going to originate right here. And when those neighborhoods implode like they did in the financial crisis, it spreads like cancer through them. So I hope we don't have a bubble burst. I'm scared. I kind of, I sit there and look at that going, that's a lot of booked business. And if you look at where we started the financial crisis, or not the financial crisis, COVID, we were at 1,500 pending sales. So in the 2-year period, they've doubled the pending sales, and they've almost, we'll call it another double in the supply. So it's going to be interesting to see how the new home plays out over the next 2-3 quarters. What the beautiful thing is with recessions, depressions, whatever we want to call them, they're always hindsight. And the reality is our buyers and sellers are in the market today. They don't wait for that data to come out, because if they wait for it, they've missed the bubble or the ride up or ride down. So, that's a great question. So, when I start looking at, where do we have our problems in the past and where we're kind of going, one of the things that sticks out, and I've lived in Central Austin my whole time, 22 years here. Central Austin is so insulated. So new builds in Central Austin, luxury, it'll be okay. The luxury sellers during the financial crisis, they didn't have to sell, they just didn't sell. They stayed in place. Now, I worry about the big tract neighborhoods where there's acres and acres and acres of raw land. Exactly. That's where our exposure is going to be. I worry about Elgin.
I have said for probably decades now.
I have said for probably 2.
Damn, arguing with Siri? What the fuck? So I've said for decades now, if you're there's a book, what is it called? The Millionaire Next Door, right? Where they say, habits of millionaires are they buy in established neighborhoods, right? So when you talk to investors or people that are just investment savvy, I'd always say that if you want to have a good house that's going to last for a good investment, you don't go to a place. Let's say you buy a house in a new neighborhood and you have let's say you could put up a 4-story ladder, right? And then you can see miles and miles of room to build. That might not be the best investment for you, right? And we have, when Sonny and I were selling anywhere from 30 to 60 listings a year, we would always not sell 3 to 4 listings a year. And they were almost exclusively homes that in a new neighborhood, brand new neighborhood, that the seller needed to sell within 1 to 3 years, right? Every single time, right? And because when things start to go down, the builders will undercut the resales, right? And it's so funny, some of these people, like, they said that this was going to be the last, this is the last phase of that neighborhood. Well, they opened a new phase. They didn't mean to call it a phase. They named it instead. I like Bear Creek. How many fucking Bear Creeks are there, right? Like, it was the last phase in Bear Creek something, but it's not the last phase in Bear Creek, whatever it is, right? And I just want to say, like, what he's talking about with 3,000 homes that are under contract here, and you've got, a glass 3/4 full here, okay, is that
I think Tim Ferriss in his book 4 Hour Work Week is like, imagine the worst thing that can possibly happen, okay? Well, in reality, it's not even gonna be half of that. So yeah, that's gonna be a damper if even 50% of those people default, or default from their contract. But I don't think it's gonna happen. I mean, yeah, it's gonna hurt, but 3,000 is not gonna happen.
No. So one of the things, we talk about this, and to Ryan's points, when we had the financial crisis that really kind of beat us up, those devastating hits were really isolated within the MSA. And if you go look at long term, like we talk about investors, when do they enter? Most of my investors are in a 10 to 15 year play per property. We're not in this 1 year, 2 year, 3 year. We get upset when taxes spike 1 year, and we know income catches up in 18 to 24 months to cover those expenses. And if you look at Central Austin, which I've lived in, we've never really had a step back in 22 years I've owned a home in Central Austin. It may be harder to sell. It may take 5 to 6 months. It may take 2 days. Heck, it may be gone with the coming soon sign in the yard. It ever changes. But Central Austin, I'm not worried about. Like, if you live in anything that ends in Austin that isn't surrounded by, I guess there's not a lot of new build left in Austin anymore. You're going to be fine. Circle C is one of my favorite places for investors. We talk about investor specials and what they like. Most of my investors love homes that were built between 1980 and 1990 by Milbourne. They love them because they're in established neighborhoods. They're 1 story, 1,300 square feet. You buy what's predictable. You buy what works. Personally, we don't buy new neighborhoods because we're always scared of what happens. And this chart scares me. Now that we've been talking about it with a couple people who are just like, wow, what does happen? And where does this go? I don't know. I wish I could tell you. I wish I could say, hey, it's going to bust or it's not going to bust. But if we have a problem, it's going to be here, not in our resales. Yeah.
And I want to talk about, I was at the Inman conference 2 weeks ago, and one of the guys there were talking about real estate agents posting on Facebook and Instagram about how bad the market is, okay? This is a self-fulfilling prophecy, okay? The more you say that, the more it's going to get around. And we have got to stop interjecting our stupid opinions, okay? Report the facts, right? These are facts, okay? But, this is why I say when you talk to a buyer about what's going to happen, is it going to go down? I don't know. Is it going to go up? Yes. Okay, it's definitely going to go up. But even the people that bought in these neighborhoods where, let's say 3,000 of them default, which won't happen, but let's say it did, that's going to be over with in 3 years. Okay? So, and especially in this town, in Austin, I mean, all it takes is 2 more headlines. Let's say 3 headlines, but we already had 1. Apple's building 686,000 square feet campus, right? We're going to have 2 more headlines in the next 6 months that is going to tell everyone in the area that Austin's not going anywhere. And it probably won't be 6 months. Now, we still have seasonality of the market, and it's going to be kind of shitty for the next 6 months. It always is. Like between now and the end of the year, it always is. Some people say they'd have their best month in November. Does anybody here have their best month in November? Yeah. Well, the reason why is because you've got the inventory and there's not a lot of buyers. Or you've got the buyer and they're ready to buy. But the reality of it is that, seasonality of the market is a real thing. And every single year, things go down. It happened last year, too, between June and December. This year it's going to be worse. But so what?
So one of the things, we talk about that seasonality and when we make our money. I, in the last 10 years, might have had 2 closings from May to October. I just don't do business in the summer. My investors aren't savvy enough to go compete with the owner occupants and things like that. We talk about best periods. October to February is my money-making period. Because we go in, it's like, oh, wow, look, we've got, right now, something else I do like that a lot of people don't do is when your buyers can't find what they want in the MLS, in an active situation, start using those withdrawals and expireds. Call those agents. I get a lot of business for my investors out of the W's and X's by just calling those agents and going, hey, is this still available? I don't want to circumvent you. And by gosh, they get on the phone and go, we got a buyer. Let's deal. Rentals, yeah. I mean, but the W's, I'm looking at that going, we've got a whole new shadow market that's kind of out there because withdrawals are at levels we haven't seen since 2018.
And I gotta tell you one thing, if you're looking for a property for your buyer, is like, you know, I'm not saying you should go to the phone bank and like call the owner and all that. I mean, if you want to do that. I've done it before. I don't really like it. Call the listing agent. Okay, I mean, if you're looking for, I mean, you can call the owners, but I mean, sometimes they've already been called like 15,000 times, right? So, but if you call the listing agent, that's the path of least resistance.
Yeah, and those agents, honest, will love you. The previous listing agents. Last one I did was with Olivia Bernard. I called her up and I'm like, hey, can I show that house between Christmas and New Year? She's like, are you crazy? I'm like, out-of-town investor, they're here. They want to see. And she sold that listing. Sellers were happy. We even let them stay because it was in the height of the craziness. We let them stay a few months while they figured out what they were doing because I didn't want to lease a property in January. You know, we want to lease them in April, May, June when we get top dollar. But I don't think the world's falling apart. I think we are in a recession unit-wise in Central Texas. There is some price softening, but we always have seasonality. I think the softening is a little greater than it's been in years past. And, you know, for owner-occupants, buy when you can. Buy what you can afford. You're better off owning something than nothing in Central Texas. Even if it's a condo on Breaker, even if it's a single-family house out, well, we don't go to Cedar Park anymore for affordability. You go to Leander. You know, you find what you can afford and what you can tolerate for your drive time. But buyers are always buyers. You just got to get them coached to that step of wanting to be the buyer.
All right, give it up for Chris. Appreciate it. So I'm going to have Emily talk about something, whatever you're going to talk about. Come up here. And then, so was this helpful, guys? Cool. Well, Johnny and Sunny and I will be here for probably the next 30 minutes after we're done. And then, Sunny, do you have any announcements to make after this? Yeah, and so there's also a QR code panel there for some helpful links.
Thank you. Hey guys, I'm Emily Bibby. I know most of you guys, but it's cool to see so many new faces here. So I'm the past chair for AREP, Austin Young Real Estate Professionals. I know a lot of you guys have come to our events before. We had a really awesome event up here a couple months ago with Chris and Ryan doing a market update. So we do cool things like that. We've got a really great event coming up on September 1st. It's a realtor safety event. Our group has partnered with Women's Council of Realtors and the Austin Real Estate Alliance to put this event on. We've got the Beverly Carter Foundation coming to speak to us and a martial arts specialist to come talk about self-defense moves. Realtor safety is a really big deal, and it's something that we kind of forget about and put to the back end, I think. Beverly Carter was targeted because she was perceived to be extremely successful because of the way she marketed herself. And that's something that we all need to be really cautious of. So it's a really great event. Doesn't matter how big, strong, fast you are, it's something to be cautious of. So I encourage everybody to come out. If you guys know other agents that would benefit from it, I encourage you to invite them as well. I think I blasted it on Workplace the other day, so the event information is there. Also, check out AREP. We're a great organization, and it doesn't matter how old you are, young at heart, young in the business, young in age, doesn't matter. Yeah, for sure. It's everybody. It's just a really great group. It's a great way to plug into the industry. We do things like safety events, market updates, networking mixers, things like that. So hope to see you guys there, and thanks.
All right, so that concludes. Feel free to stick around, and yeah, let me know if you have any questions. I'll be here.